see here, guys. All right, we're live. Can you hear me now? Let's see here. Getting everything done here, guys. Hold on. All right. Clear as a bell. You can hear me. All right. Clear as a bell. You can hear me. Turn my volume down here. I'm here. All right, guys, what's going on? Hello, John. Kenya. What's going on, guys? So yeah, November live. Every month we do a live Q&A. So if you guys got questions from any of the videos, hop on, fire them at me. We're here. Let's do it. Snowy day here in Wisconsin. We're supposed to get a lot of snow, but we've got about 2 inches so far. So, howdy, Nate. Hello, Jordan. How's it going? 27 from the south side of Chicago, wanting to start trimming and start a farm. Really? That would be awesome. Go for it. Take some guts to do either one of those, especially if you've never done it before. Hello from southeast Minnesota. Hello. Not far from here. Hello from PA. Robert says, what's going on, guys? Didn't get any in Illinois. It might be coming because well, quite a bit of Illinois should get some of this. What got you into hoof trimming and repair? So when I went to college at Winona State University in Minnesota, and when I was going to school there, I worked on a dairy near Altura, Minnesota. And one of my jobs on that dairy was to help their hoof trimmers. So he would come every 2 weeks. I would help him get cows in and stuff like that. So that's when I had my first experience with like seeing what it was and you know what was involved in it. Obviously, I wasn't doing it full time or hadn't done it full time at that point. So I didn't know all the ins and outs, but I could see the basics of it. And knowing that I wanted to start my own business, it was kind of a natural at that point. It's like, okay, I think I could do this and I kind of like it. So just take the leap. So when I graduated college, that's what I did. How much do the basic to start cost and what training do I need? So basic costs, you're gonna need, and it's gonna vary wildly, right? So depending on, you're gonna need a truck and you're gonna need a hoof trimming chute. So that can range from a lot, you can get a used one for maybe, well, depending on how you wanna do it. I would get a decent one, but I would say minimum on a chute, you're gonna spend probably $20,000. And then with a truck, at least 10 there minimum. So you're looking at 30 there. Equipment outside of that is not much. Couple of grinders and your wraps and stuff. You could probably, and wheels, so grinders, wheels, and the basics to get going are probably another $2,000. And then of course you got to be trained. So you're looking at, I would say 40 to 50 to get started, somewhere in that range. And then going to school, you got to find a school too and what I did, I trained with a professional hoof trimmer. So that's probably your best bet if you're looking to get into it is start working with another trimmer. That way you'll learn it a little bit, you'll learn the trade, but then he's going to have ways to get you connections to get you chutes and things like that. Trucks, find out ways to do that affordably. So we need more and more videos and more, says Raven Ram. One-man show. I do it as best I can. We're getting into winter season, so it's going to slow down some now. In the summertime, you're going to have more hoof problems, so hence more videos. But got a couple more I'm working on right now, so we're not done yet, right? And there's still, I'll get plenty of videos in the winter too. But hi, Nate. Don Berlin here, USAF, USDI, deployed to the Middle East, and lots of guys watch your videos as a means to relax during tense times near Gaza. Oh, awesome. Try so much for your service, for all of us. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for your service to us. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad I can do anything in those times like that. If I can reduce stress, especially in a place like that, I'm all for it. Once again, thanks for doing what you do. That's much more important than what I do, believe it or not. Happy belated Thanksgiving to you too as well, Jackie. Okay, let's see. Something I've been dying to know. How come when a cow wears a block, their ankle doesn't bend and make their wrapped claw touch the ground? I feel like physics means this would happen. Well, it'll move down a little bit, but not all the way, right? Because you're elevating it by about 3/4 to an inch. So it's not going to move that far. And those bones are somewhat connected in there. So they can only move so far inside that foot. So if they did touch, it would be defeating the purpose, right? So sometimes if they have, just based on the way they walk, you have to use a thicker block or 2 blocks if you have some swelling to get the weight all the way off, but generally 1's enough. It will move down a little bit, but not a lot. You have to haul the chute? I do. Yeah, now, so if you were to, the other option, I take the chute from farm to farm, and I've got about 25 different farms that I trim on, so I can't necessarily leave it at one place because I need it on all those other farms, right? So, but if you were to get a job on a big dairy and had learned the craft of hoof trimming, sometimes you can they will provide the chute and you can trim on those farms. Those are in-house trimmers, we call them. So you're going to be limited as far as likely how much you can make trimming that way, because you're going to be on hourly or salary probably. But yeah, that's another option too. That way you wouldn't need a truck or trailer. The farm would provide that. But those are, you have to find those very specific situations where that would work. Do you charge per cow or a group charge? I charge on a per cow basis. So just a normal hoof trim is going to be $15. And then if you have to wrap them or block them, that's extra. Most of what I do is maintenance trimming. So it's just trim all 4 feet, put the cow down, out she goes, right? So that's going to be $15. If you have to wrap, if you have an abscess or something, we need to block and wrap. It's an extra 25 for the block and another 5 for the wrap. So that's kind of how I charge. Some guys charge setup fees. I don't do that. And then they'll have some will have minimums, for setting up as well. Most of my farms meet the minimums, so I don't really have to deal with any situation like that. And if they're close, I don't really worry too much about any of that stuff. It's not a big deal. Ray's question about the block and ankle, please. I got that one already, guys. Yeah, it shouldn't, they don't roll their ankles over on a block. I've never seen that happen. Sometimes they'll catch when they, just because they're not used to it at first, they'll catch the toe a little bit when they walk. They figure that out pretty quick. Thank my wife and friends, country, for they can do the work. Yeah, got you, Don. It's so much hoof you take away, and the hoof material catches high dollar in China. Wouldn't it be worth to get a couple of pounds every day, clean it, and sell it to China? Hey, if they want hoof, reach out to me. I can get lots of it. Yep. But I think that if they really wanted them, they could get hoof in easier ways than that, and much cleaner as well. Honestly, that's a lot cheaper than I would have thought. Then again, I'm not a huge farm person. Right, so it's really not an expensive process, and the way, because of the efficiencies that we've built into it over time, that's what keeps that price low, right? So when you had to pick each foot up individually and trim them by hand and hold the foot, that was a lot more dangerous. You got beat up. You probably had to charge, or you charged roughly the same amount, but you would make less, throughout the day. So back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when they trimmed like that, they didn't need to make as much. Well, we charge the same amount, but we can trim now, instead of 1 or 2 cows an hour, we can trim 10 to 20 cows an hour. So that's how we make our money on that. Hello from Elmwood, Kansas. Hello. Are you guys staying out of the snow? Is that south of you or north of you? I mean, you guys should be just barely south of this storm we're getting now. Save the trimmings and create a dog treat brand. Yeah, I've seen those. They have those actually. Hoof bites or something like that. Yeah, and dogs do love them. I'll tell you that for sure. How many farms do you support on a regular basis? I've got about 25 farms in total. Some of those are only going to be, twice a year trims though. So I'll go there and trim the entire herd in the spring and fall. So I'll be there twice. On a lot of my dairies though, it's a regular basis. So it'll be every 2 weeks to every 3 weeks, month, something like that, depending on the size of them. So those I'll be to more often. That all has to do with the number of cows on the farm and the number of trims that they want to accomplish per year. Some farms will do 2 trims a year. Other farms will do closer to 4. So it all depends on the farm and the individual, how they manage it, basically. Do you ever take your kids to work with you, and do they like the process? I have taken my daughters come and watched a couple of like fair cow trims, short days, a couple cows. My oldest son actually helps me in the summer, so he's seen plenty. Does he like the process? Yeah, I wouldn't say he likes the process. No, he likes the fact that I pay him. That's about it. He gets dirty, so it's not quite the funnest job in the world for him. But hello from the UK. Hello. Do the cows recognize you? Yes, sometimes. So not necessarily. Cows don't necessarily look forward to trimming or think of me as their savior by any means, because I'm taking them out of their everyday routines, right? They're not necessarily happy to see me. But I do have ones, the more you work with them, and they become familiar with the process, the easier they are with it. They just kind of go in the chute and not a big deal. I do have a few that will come and they like to get head scratches and they'll stop. If their pen is open, they'll come out and mess around. Pull on my grinders, be a pain in the butt. How long have you done this? I've been trimming for a little over 23 years, about 23 and a half years now. Started right out of college, 23 years old when I started trimming. Hello from the Netherlands. Hello. I flew into the Netherlands this year. Yeah, I try to mix these lives up so that I can get people all over the world at different times. It's just hard to, I have to do it just right. Otherwise, it's the middle of the night for me, right? How expensive are the tools you use? So my hoof knives are about, I'd say right around 25, 30 bucks a piece for those. The wheels themselves are about $275, and the inserts in them, what do they run? About $15 an insert, and I got 2 of those in each wheel. So that's that. Grinders are about $70 a piece. I run 3 of those, one on each front foot and then one on the back. And then wraps and blocks kind of pay for themselves as you buy them. So the wraps are, I buy them by the case. I think they're about $100 for a case of them. Same with blocks. I don't even know what I pay for blocks anymore. I don't pay, it might sound weird, you don't know what I pay for them, but I know what I use, which ones I use, and I just order them, and that's that, right? I've used the same blocks now for years. They change styles a little bit, but, so I don't really pay attention to the price, I just buy what I need. Originally from Poland and live in Croatia now. So another 2 European countries from me. Awesome. I need to get to the Eastern European area. I think it's a lot like, well, I shouldn't say it's a lot like here, but I feel like it's a lot like how I envisioned farming when I was a kid. That's how the areas, that's why I kind of want to visit them. But are the claws softer when the cows are 100% indoors? Yes. And the reason that is because, well, I shouldn't say that. Not necessarily. If it's a wet environment outdoors, they can be soft as well. But the feet stay wet all the time when they're indoors, right? So they're on concrete. The moisture that is on the concrete is going to keep the hooves hydrated. Therefore, they're going to be softer. The hardness of the hoof is completely related to how much moisture is in it. So, yep, indoors are going to be. Sean Booth, thank you. Super chat. Appreciate that. Lots of Europeans in here. That's perfect. What time? Yeah, you guys are in the evening probably in Europe right now. What would be that? 8, 9 o'clock-ish? Something like that? I wonder about bacteria in the trims. Do you disinfect between trims, or is that necessary? I'm so curious. So, in general, if it's just a normal maintenance trim, I'm not disinfecting my tools in between them. Even though there might be dermatitis on the farms, these cows are going to be, especially in free stalls, they can move around, so they're going to be in contact with that bacteria anyway. So transmission from cow to cow is already happening. The only time I'm going to be more conscious of that is when I'm dealing with open lesions, right? So I don't want to introduce something to that, especially. That's what I'm fighting against. So you missed the green wrap, Ron. The brand that I use now doesn't come in green, believe it or not. It comes in a lot of neon colors. I could switch brands just to do green wraps, obviously, but I kind of like the ones I'm using. They use fluorescent colors, so they're easier to see to make sure the farmers take them off. But I think I missed a question up here. Where did it go? First time seeing my face. Oh, yeah. Yeah, every live you can see my face. Do you think we'd all enjoy hoof trimming videos a lot less if we could smell them? Yes, for sure. Unless you're into those, unless you're into weird smells, right? You ever have anybody do that? We're like, oh man, this smells terrible. Here, smell it. But yeah, there's some interesting smells. A lot of people can't handle even the barn smell, but to me, the farm smell, that doesn't bother me. I don't even notice it. But yeah, the abscess smells, the foot rot and necrosis are the worst, actually. Those are the ones that, yeah, they'll make your stomach turn if you're not used to it. I'm used to it, though. Are some cows more prone to hoof issues, or would recurring issues be caused by the environment they live in? So, in general, a lot of the things that we treat, or like the abscesses and stuff like that, are not recurring issues. Like it's not very often that you trim a cow that had an abscess and gets another one. They're kind of one-off situations. Now, if you watch my channel, you'll think, well, you work on white lines all the time. I do, but you're talking about thousands of cows, and I'm pulling a video or two a week from, right? So it's not, that are in my care, I should say. So the prevalence is still pretty low as far as which cows get them. So seeing repeat occurrences on an individual is pretty rare. Now, when you're dealing with things like ulcers, those can become chronic, because when you have an ulceration, what you see is the corium, problems with the corium, right? But the bone on the inside, when you have that, is also becoming damaged, and it'll get little protrusions like that are on the bottom of the pedal bone. A pedal bone should be nice and smooth if you were to feel it with your fingers, but they'll get these little jagged points on them, and that then is going to make that cow more prone to getting more or more prone to ulceration over time because of that. So those can become chronic. That's why we want to address those as early as possible and prevent them if possible. But the other ones are kind of one-off, right? They may, like digital dermatitis, that could come back if they are introduced to it again, or if they have a break in the skin, foot rot, things like that. But they don't become more prone, or an individual doesn't become more prone because they've had it before, if that makes sense. How do you determine which hooves get modeled out and when you don't? So in general, I don't do a lot of modeling, and it's just based on the method that I trim, right? I trim the natural method, or the Kansas method. And what that means is I'm trying to create a uniform sole all the way across that foot. That's how the natural sole is going to be on a cow, right? Uniform. And when you do that, you naturally are going to distribute weight throughout that claw. There's not going to be high pressure points necessarily, so the need for modeling isn't nearly as much. Now, if you're using like the Dutch method, now in that case, the sole is not going to be uniform all the way across. You're going to have, if you were to look at a cross section of a sole there, the sole on the outside of the claw, on the lateral claw, on the back foot, is going to be thinner than it will on the inside or the axial wall side. So in that case, you're gonna be changing the way pressure is distributed in that foot, so modeling becomes more necessary. Now, there are instances, you'll notice when I have cows that have reverse corkscrew, where they're putting more weight on that medial claw, then you'll see I'll use a wide model there, just because she's focusing, almost all of her weight is being applied, and that ground force is being applied to that medial claw, and the way that she's stepping is putting extra pressure in that particular spot, so I model that out. But in general, you shouldn't have an amplification of pressure in that area if they're uniform, because she's gonna be walking as she normally would. Don, thank you. Super chat, $50. Thank you, I appreciate that a lot. From your friends at the Air Force Installation Base. That is awesome, guys. Hello, guys, if you're watching right now, that's super cool. Thank you guys for protecting us, right? Much appreciated. I should be paying you, is what I should be doing. I missed something here. What you drinking? I am drinking Twigs Diet Grape. So this is Twigs is a local to Wisconsin craft pop company, right? They beverages, soda, craft soda, and they also bottle for Sundrop. If you've ever heard of Sundrop, they bottle for them over in Shawano, Wisconsin. Now this particular one, the Forget Me Not Grape, they donate to the Alzheimer's Foundation. So every bottle you buy, you get a donation there. So they're pretty cool. Tasty stuff too. No beer yet. A little early for that. One of your faithful listeners, favorite Hoof Guy. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. How long did it take you to learn how to take care of hooves, and how long have you been working with hooves? So I'm learning every day, right? So I still haven't learned everything, obviously. And I've been trimming for 23 years now. So a little over 23 years. I actually started trimming. So I trained for about 3 months or so of on-farm work before I started trimming on my own. But I still worked every day with a professional up until that. So, but then you don't, like I said, there's still new things that you're learning and trying to improve upon throughout your entire trimming career. Little things that you'll notice that you want that just don't seem right. You're trying to figure out how to do better with. So, always learning. Is the weather as bad in Wisconsin as it is in Iowa? It's not here, right? So they were talking coming into today that we could get 6 to 9 inches. We've got about 2 so far, right? We were actually at my in-laws for Thanksgiving and left early. We left late last night to try to beat the storm, thinking that it would be bad, but it really is not too bad out yet. It's going to get cold this week, which is what I'm not looking forward to. Working in the freezing temperatures is not good on hands, put it that way. It's only 2:30 p.m. in Colorado. How is that late? What do you mean? It's not late. Not late at all. Early. Sean Booth, $20. Hey, thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the super chat. You guys are awesome. Did you hear about the Hoof GP's injury? No. Didn't hear. Something bad happened? I have not paid attention. Why? What happened? How many cows' hooves do you take care of on a single day? How often do they poop when you're working on them? And were you ever injured by a cow during work? Hopefully not. So, okay, 3-parter. How many cows' hooves do you take care of in a single day? I trim anywhere from 40 to 50 cows a day. So 160 to 200 hooves a day in general. Now, most of that's maintenance trimming, right? Quick, 2 minutes to trim a foot, right? How often do they poop when you're working on them? Almost every single cow will poop in the chute. No joke. They eat a lot. They eat about 100 pounds a day. So they're going to poop in general every probably 15, 20 minutes, hour the most, right? So add any stress, like putting them in the chute, you betcha. Do you get it on you? Yes, for sure. Were you ever injured by a cow during work? Yes. I had a cow that came, I was trimming on a back foot, and I had a cow come from behind. Normally I have a gate that I shut so they can't do that, but there was a gate on this tub that the cows were in. Didn't need to shut mine, I thought. Well, she nosed it open and came running right at me. And I laid the grinder into my arm running. You really can't see it much, but there's a scar right here where I laid the grinder across my arm. This was 20 years ago, and opened it wide open. So that was one injury. I cut my thumb with a knife really bad one time. Had wet gloves. One reason why I don't spray off feet. Wet gloves are dangerous. And then I got stepped on by a cow, chasing him, trying to get him in the holding area or in my holding lane one time. One turned, stepped right on my ankle. That was probably the worst injury that I had. It took me, I was out for about 3 weeks where I couldn't walk. So, did I get them all? Yes, all those questions. Yeah, so, yep. Part of your daily routine, Justin. Perfect. Well, I got to make more than you got to run out. Better get to work on that. What was the hardest hoof you've ever trimmed? So the ones that are really super dry. So cows that stay in. So in the old tie stall barns, cows would stay in the wintertime, they'd stay in all winter. And then if they use sawdust for bedding, their front feet would tend to stay perfectly dry. Their back feet would get a little bit of moisture just naturally from them. But the front feet would be dry. They get hard, almost like cement. I mean, really, really hard. So, and I used to have a lot of farms like that. Now I don't have any of those. Those type of farms are they become obsolete for the most part. But, so I don't run into them a lot, but man, harder than any wood that you would ever work on, for sure. So it's really, honestly, it's closer to trimming on concrete. That's what they feel like when you run a grinder on them. I actually enjoyed trimming those though, believe it or not. But why don't they perform a colostomy on cows so they don't poop on the floor? Yeah, that'd be nice. I do have there's a chute in the back that directs the flow, not so it doesn't come right on me, but it's close enough. I bet you keep the gate shut now, says Sean. Yeah, I do. Actually, I've got a, what do they call it? There's an official name for it, but I've got doors that close now in the back of my chute, so it blocks it off, and it's just part of my routine. When she comes in, I put the strap back behind her, and then those doors close. So, yeah. And even, it's to the point where if I'm to my last cow, where I know there's not even any cows behind me in that could come, I still close those doors. When I look back and see them open, it makes me nervous. But do cows try to run away when it's their time for trimming? Sometimes, yeah, they'll circle. They don't want to come into the lane, but if you have other cows in there, they'll follow them in. The key to it is not leaving it so there's one single cow left. Then you're going to end up with problems because they're generally going to want to go where the cows are. And if there's no cows to follow and you're trying to chase them into a machine, they're not going to want to do that. But they can't run too far because I've got them kind of in a small holding pen. But washing hooves before trimming is pointless, but when would it be appropriate to do so? If they're really filthy and there's, open corium, then I spray them off so I can see what I'm looking at, right? But if there's hoof material over that, then spraying them off doesn't do it much good because I have to do a lot of trimming before I can clean the lesion itself. That's why I don't do that. I wait, and then I can isolate that spray to the area that I needed to. I'm not soaking everything. Because when you turn those grinders on, that you're gonna fling all of that wet material onto your hands and gloves and your body, and you just don't want to do that. In fact, I go to lengths to avoid having wet feet by putting sawdust and stuff behind my chute. So if their hooves are wet, when they step into that, it kind of dries them off gently, and then I just scrape the debris off. But how did I become a hoof trimmer, and did I learn this? How did I slip into it? So I worked on a dairy when I was in college. Yep, and that was part of my job, was helping their hoof trimmers. So when I graduated, I asked him if he'd train me, and he agreed, and the rest is history. Do your hands, fingers get sore from holding the knife, especially if the hoof is hard? So on the really hard hooves, I don't do a lot of knife work because you don't really need to. But if there is, let's say there's a lesion in one of those hooves, the moisture from that lesion, whatever's seeping there, will actually make that hoof horn soft in that area. So then when you're running the knife, you're not like cutting into concrete, right? Do my hands get sore? My right elbow's been like, I think I got a little tennis elbow or something going on lately, but my hands, only at night, I notice it. They'll fall asleep, go numb sometimes, but not necessarily painful. Sometimes I get my joints, I get like a trigger finger in these two fingers, but I'm guessing I will have arthritis as an old man. But why did you start a YouTube channel? So it was it was 2020 is when I started, but I saw a video. What pushed me into doing it was I saw a video on Facebook. It was a cow getting its hooves trimmed, and it was on like a animal rights type page, and it was depicted as torture. And I thought, oh, that is ridiculous. Who is going to believe that, right? So I watched the video, or I saw that clip, and then I watched I clicked on the comments to see. I'm like, no one's going to believe this. Well, the comment section was lit up. People were ticked. Like, how can they even create a machine to torture cows? This is ridiculous. I thought, oh man, people just don't understand what's happening. It was a cow getting a hoof trim, right? Simple. It was taking care of the cow, but it was depicted as torture, and people believed it. So I thought, somebody needs to tell the story correctly, otherwise this is going to, become more prevalent. And you noticed over time there's been a lot of farming pages that have come about, hoof trimming pages, vet pages, explaining these processes so that people can understand them, and there's not a false narrative put around them. So that was kind of what pushed me into doing it. But I'd always kind of wanted to do something with YouTube, but when I first started, I like to fish. And a friend of mine had a fishing show, so we did YouTube stuff around fishing. But when you work full time and you're trying to support a family and stuff, you don't have a lot of time to do your hobbies for YouTube. So I'm like, well, I go trimming every day. I'll start filming that. So what pushed me into it was that video, though. Let's go here. Missed a bunch. So if I miss your questions, I'm not answering them, throw them back up there, because I get off on a rant like that, and then they zip by me here. How much do you make a year trimming hooves, if you don't mind sharing? So it can vary based on how many cows you want to trim. What do I make? About 110 a year. But you can go anywhere from, it's based on a per cow basis. So for me, that's about 8,000 head a year I trim, 8 to 10, somewhere in that range. But some guys trim 20, 30,000 head a year. So simple math at that point. What was the biggest cut mistake you made and where a lot of red water came out? I wouldn't say I made any, cut small, make small mistakes, right? So you might nick corium, something like that. Nothing, you should never be putting enough force into it toward corium that you can cause severe damage, right? So I would say in any of the videos where it might happen, those are going to be the most severe ones, right? That one where they catch you off guard, the one that I just posted a couple days ago, the heifer with the disaster hoof or whatever, however I titled that one, that's about the extreme you're going to have when you cut into corium, right? It's going to bleed, no doubt, because corium is super sensitive, a lot of blood vessels and stuff in there. So, but like I said, you shouldn't be cutting down into the corium where your knife, your strokes are going in there. So you're really never going to make you shouldn't make a serious injury. But just wanted to say hi. Hello, Kaiser. Head out and take a nap. Keep it up. Will do, Jets. Thank you. I wouldn't have thought you looked like that. What do you think I look like? Old man? How much time does it take to sharpen your knives? So probably each one, probably minute and a half, maybe. That's about it. All I have to do is, so you have a rubber wheel on a bench grinder, right? A rubber wheel, abrasive wheel on one side, leather cloth type wheel on the other. The rubber wheel, I'll just run my knife across that. If there's any scratches in it from sand or anything like that, that'll take that away. I put an edge on it, and then I'll hone that edge, really polish it with that cloth wheel. But that's a pretty quick process unless they're really damaged. If I hit a rock and put a big dent, a big divot in that knife, then I'll have to take off some material. It might take a little longer, but that's pretty rare. I try to avoid that. That's, you see me scratching at the bottom of the hoof sometimes. That's to pick some of the bigger rocks out so I don't cause a lot of damage with my knives. Does air temperature affect hoof density at all? Not really. Nope. It's really moisture that it's going to affect that. So, do you ever come across cow's feet that get an infection through a cut on the soft, fleshy part of the foot up between the two hooves? Yes, that's how foot rot, foul starts, is exactly that. If you get a little abrasion in there, even if it's, what can also happen is from foot bath chemicals, if they're mixed too richly, too harsh, that can dry that skin out. That skin can crack, get just like the cracks on our hands, right? And then bacteria can get in that way too. So yeah, that's pretty common. That's how foot rot and foul, that's how that takes hold. That's how it starts. But do you have calluses on the areas where you hold your knife? No, not really. See, I have a callus right here from where my grinder runs, where I hold the handle of my grinder rubs, but over time. I do much more work with the grinder than the knife work, actually. I know you see in the videos, I'm doing mostly knife work around lesions, but most of my time spent at work is actually just doing maintenance trimming. So it's grinder work for the most part. Have you ever had an apprentice yourself? I have not. Nope, my son would be the closest. And he's not really an apprentice, he's just helps me out. How did you find out you wanted to do this job? I didn't really know for sure. I was working on a dairy, and I always looked forward to hoof trimming day, but part of that was because I was hanging out with Wayne. Wayne Went was the guy that trained me. He's from Plainview, Minnesota. He's just fun to be around. So we always had a good time when we were trimming besides. So I wanted to own my own business. I had fun trimming. So I thought, well, I can be on different farms. I know I wanted to live back home and in the northern part of the state. So I wanted to start a business there. Hoof trimming would work, lots of farms there. I thought, this could work. So I asked him if he'd train me, and that's how it started. So I didn't know for sure that I would like it, but turned out I did. The hoof GP injury, if you Google HGP injury, he's in the hospital. He had major hand surgery. Ooh. Grinder injury, probably. I've not seen that. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, if it's, the grinders can kick. So if you're running that grinder and a cow kicks, I'm assuming that's what it is. They can kick that grinder into your hand. Yeah. Grinder injury. We're just saying, I cut my thumb one time, and I can just, every time I think of knives or grinder cuts, I can feel that pain. So that's not good. If you had to have surgery, that means you must have done some damage. And then that's your, it's not the cleanest environment trimming either. So you start running. filthy equipment into stuff, yeah, it's gross. But have you ever seen a problem so severe that a vet had to come and put the cow down? Death. No, not really. The ones that are the most serious are infection type stuff, right? The foul where it'll get up in the leg. Those can be life-threatening, or those can, if the cow becomes immobile, right? But I've never had to call a vet to do that, to put a cow down. That's, a farmer would make that choice, not me anyway. But, and I don't see the stuff, foot rot stuff and foul, those infections rarely get into the legs anymore, because farmers are able, we know what it is, right? We can recognize it early, give them some antibiotics, and a lot of times those systemic antibiotics will take care of that. I won't even need to work on them if you catch them early enough. So what is he? I gotta check. I don't know what that, I don't understand that one. Have you ever had to trim a calf, and what was the situation or need? No. Calves in general they don't have a lot of, most of what I treat is pressure related problems, right? Like abscesses and things like white line issues. That's from pressure that causes defects in claws. You don't really see that with calves, because their calves or their hooves are generally in perfect shape when they're born anyway, and they're light, right? They're small animals, so they don't have a lot of pressure related problems. I would say the youngest one that I worked on was a heifer years ago. She actually got her foot caught and pulled the entire claw capsule, the hard part of her hoof, right off. So that's about the smallest one that I'd worked on, but that's more of an injury, nothing like defective with the hoofs. So you don't really have to trim them, because they're not overgrown yet. The first trim for a heifer is usually right around 20 to 22 months, something like that, before they transition to become a cow. How many chutes do you have? I've seen different ones in the videos. So I had my original chute I bought when I first started. I bought it new then. But I ran that one for 20 years. So about 3 years ago, I bought a different one. The first one was a red Appleton, single leg lift in the back. And my new one is another Appleton. It's both were elevator chutes, but this one's got a dual rear leg lift. So. Does everyone in your family, have you ever amputated a claw? No, that's a vet job. Anything that surgical related, that's a vet. I don't deal with that. Does everyone in your family have the same last name, or are the women the Hoof girls? Yep, we all have the same last name. I got no Hoof girls. I mean, I got a wife and a daughter, but no, they're not Hoof girls. Oop. Just skipped a whole bunch of them. So what's going on here? My screen froze. Oh, here we go. Into his index finger. Oh, are we at? He cut his index finger? Well, that's not nearly as bad then. You should be able to work around that probably. The work you do looks very satisfying. I wish I could try it. Not sure if I would like the popping part. Yeah, it's satisfying, but not in that necessarily. So I know that the pus ones are like satisfying, the trimming ones are satisfying, but as far as trimming goes, what we enjoy the most, or what we get the most satisfaction out of, is the maintenance trimming one. You can get into a rhythm trimming, just repetitively trimming nice hooves. So those are the most satisfying for me to trim, not necessarily the ones that explode. I know that you guys enjoy those, so those are the ones I make the videos of. But when it comes to actual trimming, the ones that I enjoy the most are just the maintenance ones. You could stomach it. You'd learn. You'd figure it out over time. What's the difference between an ulcer and a lesion? An ulcer is a lesion, right? A lesion is just like a spot on the corium where the corium has been affected by something, whether it be And technically, white line issues, those are actually ulcerations as well, technically. But in the world of hoof trimming, a sole ulcer, what we call a sole ulcer, generally is from direct pressure from the pedal bone inside the foot. Whereas ulcerations that we find, or lesions associated with white line issues, are generally bacterial related. You can get pressure related problems too. I've had a couple of those in videos where they're actually pressure related lesions in the white line. But generally speaking, they're two different things. Both of them are lesions. Even the digital dermatitis lesion, or on the heels, those are lesions as well, right? It's just an area of affected tissue. An ulcer is a specific type of lesion. In Wyoming, hoof trimming is not something you can do for a living. All range cows. Yeah, yep, for the most part. You'd have to cover a lot of ground to probably make it a profession. Not far west of there, well, I guess it'd be south of there. You get into some dairy country, then you're back into it. But yeah, beef cows outside, you're probably not going to do that. You cut the tendons in 2 fingers. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's a little more serious then. Cut your tendons, yeah. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen it, but I'll check it out. Every time I scroll, it jumps ahead like 17 pages here. Travesty we didn't see. You have a cameo in Yellowstone. I agree completely. Yeah. Although, once again, those are range cows, so they shouldn't have to do a lot of hoof trimming on those. Do you like eating cow trotters? Is it fine to eat a cow trotter that had an injury but healed? Cow feet? No, I don't eat cow feet. You probably could eat one even if it hadn't had an injury and healed, but I don't eat them when they're healthy. So, oh, not a grinder. He sliced his finger. Okay. Well, knife injuries are no joke either. I've done that before. Have you thought about doing videos on the various farm dogs you encounter? Yeah, I put some snippets in the videos on occasion. Whole videos though, like I thought, that people really like those too, but generally those videos don't do as well when I do animal type videos as like cute videos, right? But they like to see hooves, and especially the ones that explode. Do you charge per trim or per cow, or per cow per year? Per trim. Yep. So if I got to put her in and do multiple trims to treat a lesion, be multiple charges per cow. Do you happen to share any of your regular farms with other trimmers, or are you the only one trimming on these farms? Yes, one of my farm, the biggest farm that I trim on, milks about 1,100 cows. There are 2 of us that trim there. But the farms they can hire whoever they want to trim. I don't have, I wouldn't say like a contract for any of the farms. They can hire whoever they want, but generally if you do a good job, you're gonna keep coming back, right? That's the only one. That farm is about 2 hours away, and he helps because I can't keep up if I were to do that one, right? That farm alone, there's about 1,600 head total on that farm with heifers. That's 3,200 trims minimum per year just on that farm. Well, I wouldn't have time to do my other farms well if I did that, so. Now there's 2 of us there. You use bee honey with pollen, raw, untreated, unfiltered. I consume about a teaspoon of my coffee to take care of my joint aches. Just a thought. Does that work? How long did you train before you went off on your own? So I trained for about 3 months. And then I would trim, and when I was, even then, in that amount of time, I was I would trim some cows on my own, but have Wayne there to, inspect, make sure I was doing a good job. And then I started trimming on some of his clients. So even though he wasn't there, he was able to see and get feedback from them about my trimming and find out how I was doing, how the cows did, and things like that. It was only until I felt comfortable having trimmed on my own on some of his that I started building my own business elsewhere. But, Do you wash your work clothes? Yeah, I do. Yep. I have to shake them out. The biggest thing is getting all the hoof chips out of them because they get caught in everything. Yep, did that. Can you do a series on your rig, tools, daily prep for your work, and maintenance of everything? Sorry if you've done this before. I have done that, but a long time ago with my old chute, so I probably should do another one. I do get a lot of questions about my knives and my wheels and stuff like that, so I should probably cover all that again. But do the cows that had pedal bone injuries get back to normal, or is their hoof permanently deformed? It's going to be permanently deformed because that bone inside there is missing, or part of it is missing. So the way that it works is that pedal bone is actually, the weight from the cow is transferred from that pedal bone. There's attachments to the outside wall from that pedal bone, right, through laminar connections. Well, when you're missing part of that pedal bone, you're going to lose some of that. So naturally, that foot, that claw, is going to have a different shape to it almost always. And in that most recent one that I just put out today, you'll see that claw is enlarged on the inside because as that, even though part of that pedal bone is missing, it's going to, when it heals and remodels, it's going to calcify and be actually a little bit larger. What's left of it is going to be bulkier, right? And then so the whole claw in general is going to become bigger. You have to understand that when you trim them so you don't over trim. But yeah, that's always something you have to keep in mind if you are trimming and notice a claw that doesn't look right or is enlarged or is deformed in some manner. You have to realize that it's not structurally going to be the same probably on the inside either. So if you try to trim that to make it look on the outside like it's normal, chances are you're not trimming it to her natural hoof angles or to the structure of the interior of her hoof, which is really what matters. You want to make sure that you're not over trimming the outside because that will cause trauma to the inside as she walks, right? If that sole flexes, it's going to be pushing into that corium. And if you've had an injury already, then that's compromised. So those are always the tricky ones when you see a claw that's got an injury involved, how to trim that the correct way to make her comfortable, but not cause long-term discomfort, if that makes sense. So how do you know how much to trim away? So with a natural method, what you're looking at is as that hoof horn starts to, when it's on the interior, when it's the normal sole thickness inside the foot, it's going to be hydrated just from the natural moisture from her foot. As she's growing it, it's going to stay hydrated. But as it grows out and gets further away from the inside of that claw, it's going to become dehydrated and start to fall away. Now, because these hooves stay hydrated all the time, that layer of dehydration is going to be thinner, or is going to be not as obvious, I should say. So it's harder to trim. But what I'm trimming off is the dehydrated outer layer. That way, and if you follow that and kind of create a normal thickness or a uniform thickness across that claw, but maintain that you don't remove all of that pith and get into that hydrated layer, then you can, that's how you keep your soles thicker. I like to keep, the general rule of thumb is to have a 1/4 inch of sole minimum, right? I always go 3/8 or more as far as sole thickness. I want to keep that sole as thick as possible just because the thicker that sole is, the less likely it is to want to flex under pressure, right? So if you have a sole that's 1/8 of an inch thick and you push on it, chances are that is going to flex. But if it was a 1/2 inch or more, pushing on that sole is not going to flex. Think of a magazine thickness versus a hardcover book thickness if you were to push on it, right? That's kind of what you're trying to do. So when I create that uniform thickness and it's deeper, it's going to be more rigid. It's going to create a situation where there's less trauma possible from the outside. Most of the trauma that's happening is from the pedal bone moving on the inside already. I don't want to create a situation where there's trauma from the outside as well through the flex of the sole. Will they be able to live a normal life even though the pedal bone is injured? Maybe need more hoof care. Yeah, they can live a normal life, and they actually do quite well, believe it or not. That's one of those things that a pedal bone fracture looks horrendous at the time, but they heal really well, and the cows actually do really well after that. I don't know why that is, because the pedal bone, when it comes out, causes a lot of damage, but they heal up really well. So yeah, they can live normal lives. They often do. Question for you. I'm a fiction writer that's poking his head into fantasy work. Verisimilitude is the name of the game. How would hoof trimming change for minotaurs? That's a good question, but I have no idea. I've never looked at a minotaur's hoof. Let me think. So that's half man, half bull, right? So they're going to have more weight toward the front because there's a man attached. Or is it, right? I'm trying to think. I'll have to study trimming minotaurs. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? That'd make for a great video. I'm sure at some point there will be AI minotaur trimming videos. I'll bet. That is a bull / cow people who walk upright. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. When you trim problematic hooves, cattle usually start defecating. Is my observation correct? Yes, one of the first things they do when they get in the chute is poop. Pretty much every time. Yep. Why? I don't know. I think it's like a defense mechanism. They know we're back there, so they're like, yeah, see if this makes them leave. I don't know. Let's see what else. Do you see any change in the number of clients, farms, cows you support, or in the trims, most often injuries over the years? Have you seen any change? Change in the number of clients? Yes, a lot of the smaller farms have the older farmers on the smaller farms have retired, and those farms have not been taken, the dairy part of those farms has not been taken over. So a lot of the smaller farms are gone now, and they're larger freestall farms now. Number of cows has gone up, believe it or not. So I trim on less farms than I did 20 years ago, but way more cows on those farms. So my workload is more than it was then. And in the trims, most often the changes in the injuries. I see the injuries are much less severe, caught a lot sooner now than they were 20 years ago. A lot of the work that I would do then was fixing problems, right? Or treating problems. Now it's preventing them, maintenance type trims. So that's the biggest change. It used to be hoof trimmer would get called to fix hoof problems, whereas now they're called to prevent those problems from happening. So we're on a normal schedule. I rarely even have to set up a time to come because we just know our days, right? Some farms it's every third Friday or every other Wednesday or every fourth Monday. So I just know, they know that I'm coming, show up, it's just part of the routine, so. Got that one. Oh, okay. What is the longest period of time you've spent working trimming on a single hoof? For one single trim, on the first trim, probably, I'm assuming that's what you mean. Or do you mean on multiple hoof trims fixing the same problem? I'm gonna assume you mean how long did it take to trim one hoof? Probably maybe 15 minutes. I would say in recent years. Before, it would routinely take me 10 minutes to trim a hoof, maybe. No, not 10 minutes to trim a hoof. 10 minutes to trim a cow back then. So probably 3 minutes to trim a hoof, 2 to 3 minutes to trim a hoof. But on bad ones, I'd say maybe 10, 15 minutes if there's a lot of really severe stuff that I got to take out of there, but I don't know. Probably be best to look at some of my videos, maybe 10 minutes on some of those. But I've had if you're talking about how many trims does it take to get a cow to completely resolve a problem, probably 4 or 5, I'd say, would be the longest amount. So over 8 to 10 weeks to work on generally, you can get them to heal. That would be the longest. But ideally, it'd be 4 to 6 weeks, be done. That block off, sole thick enough to bear weight again. How many days a week do you work trimming? So in the summertime, I'm going to be working 5 days a week in general. Some in the spring and fall, maybe 6, and in the winter, probably 3 to 4, just based on weather. So you are Nate the Hoof Guy. How you doing, my man? Yes, nice to see you, Mitch. Doing well? Will there be any severe videos coming soon? I like the ones where you see a major issue and watch how well the cows progress over the healing possible. Is that horrible of me? No, that's not horrible. I've got one I'm working on right now. I was actually editing it before this live. I've got the piecework done. Now I just have to voice it. So hopefully I'm gonna get that done tonight or tomorrow morning. So it'll be out tomorrow afternoon, maybe, or Monday. So yeah, and then it's got the initial trim, then 2 follow-ups, and it's what you're looking for. I did that one. What is the average time a routine trim on a cow takes? It takes a routine trim takes about, for me, takes about 5 minutes. That's all 4 feet. Some guys will do that in about 2 minutes, believe it or not. At what point would you consider retirement? I don't know. It all depends. Maybe 2 years, maybe more, maybe less. It all depends. Do you charge a flat rate per cow? If they need blocks, wraps, that's extra. Yes, flat rate is $15. Wraps are extra 5, blocks 25. You like the trims with a lot of blood, really? I don't like those trims because that means there's massive problems. But I got to do them. College football fan, who's your team? Badgers. Yeah, tough this year, but yes, I'm a Badger fan. Super weird questions. My dogs love cow hooves, but it's probably not safe for them to eat the ones that have major issues. So how do you keep that safe for other animals that want some? I don't really. If they come and eat them nasty ones, that's on them. So on the farms, I don't keep them away from them. They actually prefer the ones that are nasty, believe it or not. But what do you do? In our country, nobody really does hoof trimming in livestock. Is that a regional thing, or do people simply ignore it? I don't know. Where are you from? What country? Yeah, if cows are outside all the time, out on dirt, pasture, things like that, they may not have a lot of hoof problems, so hoof trimming may not be necessary. They also, cows that are on dirt, on pasture, will trim naturally themselves. That hoof material, as it dehydrates, will fall away from the hoof, so they don't become overgrown. That's why wild animals don't ever need hoof trimming. They shed naturally. What training did you receive? I trained with a professional hoof trimmer, and like an apprenticeship kind of. What brand hoof knives do you use? I use a economy double-edged hoof knife made by the Frederick Dick company. Dick knives, they're called. From Turkey, huh? Yeah, they do trim in Turkey. I've seen some, there's some, on some of the bigger dairies there, they do for sure. When trimming cow hooves, it looks like peeling potatoes. What does it actually feel like when you're trimming cow hooves? So the sole is going to have the consistency of like a hard rubber tire on a car. And those are going to be the softer ones. The hard hooves are going to be like if you were cutting into a piece of hardwood. So it looks like it's really soft, like a potato, but it's not. It's just because our knives are super sharp. How was my Thanksgiving? It was good. Yeah, I can't complain. I actually had 2 Thanksgivings, kind of, because part of the family wasn't there yet. So we had one on Thanksgiving. That was ham. We had ham and potatoes and things like that. And then we did the next one, we had turkey the next day. So we had turkey, leftover ham, and then more potatoes, a different type of corn, green beans, all that stuff. cinnamon rolls, believe it or not. Oh, yeah. Your dad had dairy cows in the 90s and never trimmed them. Southwest Iowa. Yeah, probably out on pasture or, yeah. Although in the winter, 90s, late 90s, yeah, maybe. Do you ever fear of carpal tunnel? Yes, for sure. I probably already have that started. My thing, like if I fall asleep and have my hands above my head, fall asleep with my arm above my head, my hands will go numb on that hand. So, and even I'll get some numbness in my fingers sometimes from it. So yeah, carpal tunnel, almost assuredly I have some of that going on. Where am I located? I live near La Crosse, Wisconsin, near West Salem, Wisconsin, West Central Wisconsin. Southwest Wisconsin, I guess you'd say. The driftless region. Have you ever had to work on a calf? No. Calves are generally have really nice hooves because they don't have a lot of pressure on them and they're brand new, just born, right? So not a lot of hoof problems with calves. Once they get bigger, start putting on weight, get moved to concrete, walking on concrete more, then you run into more problems. But generally the first trim is going to be around 20 to 22 months in that range. So, yeah. So yeah. Like I said, guys, usually we do live every month. So if you have questions, I'm going to wrap this up here pretty quick. But once a month, if you see something in a video you don't understand or a concept you keep seeing on all the videos you don't understand, perfect time to ask it and get one-on-one. Can answer it. Generally, I go get a little long-winded on some of my answers, so I can try to be as thorough as possible. But yeah, once a month we do that, and toward the end of the month usually, right around this time. So next month, check in, and we'll be doing another live. Thanks again, guys, for the super chats. I super appreciate that. Didn't have to do that. That is awesome. And yeah, check for that new video. Should be coming out, like I said, hopefully tomorrow afternoon if I get it done. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for joining, guys, and see you on the next live next month.